Hello everyone, welcome to this week's video, and there is a lot to cover because today was a bit of a crazy news day in the world of professional wrestling and various other things. The main topic of today's video is going to be me talking about the Royal Rumble, both this weekend's event and me reviewing some past Royal Rumble matches and why I like them so much. So I will be getting into that, but there's a bunch of extra stuff that came up that I want to talk about as well and want to make sure I get that out to you. But before I get into all of that, be sure to send me your questions for the upcoming Q&A video. I've already gotten a great handful of questions already, but feel free to send more. If you have not sent me questions yet, go ahead and do so. You can either DM them to me on Twitter, or you can email them to me at the email address listed in the description below. So be on the lookout for that, because that video will probably be soonish within the next couple of weeks. So hopefully you all enjoy that when it eventually drops. But a lot to cover today, so let's get started. Now, before I get into all the wrestling stuff, there is some Godzilla-related news that came out today that I do want to talk about. First of all, the show Monarch Legacy of Monsters, I have not watched it yet, but I am going to start watching it sometime this weekend, so I'll finally get around to watching that show, and I will review it at some point, so be on the lookout for that. Also, the Academy Award nominations came out today. Godzilla Minus One is officially the first Godzilla movie to receive an Academy Award nomination, as it was nominated for Best Visual Effects. While this is a monumental occasion for Godzilla, the character, the franchise, and everything else that Toho has built for this character for the last 70 years, I would also like to say that Godzilla Minus One got ridiculously, horribly snubbed by the Academy with this nominations list. How Godzilla Minus One, a universally praised film from critics, general audience goers, and Godzilla diehard fans like myself, this is a film that has been universally praised by pretty much every major group, which is increasingly rare in this day and age. But like I said, critics loved it, general audiences loved it, and the diehard fans, of course, loved it. So Godzilla Minus One got huge buzz coming out of its United States release in December. And it was well received in Japan as well, but that was released in November on Godzilla Day. And but when it came out to the States, it really kind of caught a lot of people off guard and surprised a lot of people at how good it was. So I was expecting, come Academy Award time, it's like, look, they're going to snub it because it's the Academy Awards and they just always snub things. I mean, according to the Academy, this is the example I always go back to. Dances with Wolves is a better movie than Goodfellas. I'm like, no, it's not. Only the Academy would say that. Forrest Gump is a better movie than Pulp Fiction and Shawshank Redemption and Ed Wood and The Lion King. Yeah, better than all those. Forrest Gump, which is not a terrible movie or anything like that, but it's like, come on, come on. Sean Penn deserved the Best Actor award over Mickey Rourke for The Wrestler, which was like the performance of a lifetime. The Academy has their weird biases against genre films or whatever, and I've always had the stance, a great movie is a great movie. What difference does it make what genre it is, and why do we have to be so snobby about it? But, so I was not expecting Godzilla Minus One to get a lot of love, but I was expecting a few more nominations than just visual effects, which is usually just the award was like, okay, we'll throw you a bone and nominate you for Best Visual Effects. And Godzilla Minus One's visual effects were very impressive, but this is also the category where they probably deserve to lose, because I saw the creator, Gareth Edwards, former Godzilla director, directed the 2014 film. I saw his film, The Creator. Pretty good sci-fi film, not a classic or anything like that, but pretty good, and obviously he poured his heart and soul into it, and the effects on that movie look incredible. Incredible looking movie. So that one probably deserves to win Best Visual Effects, so I'm just sitting there like, all the things you could have nominated Minus One for, you nominated in the one category where it probably arguably doesn't deserve to win. It was weird. Like, you could have gone Best Actor, you could have gone Best Director for sure, you could have nominated it for Best Film, and they gave Barbie all these nominations, which, let me tell you, I saw Barbie when it came onto Max. My wife picked it, and neither one of us enjoyed it. She thought it was weird and was confused by it, and I thought it was a thoroughly obnoxious movie. I can go on a gigantic rant about how bad the Barbie movie is, but what I will say is that it was a movie that was not made for me, so I'm not gonna be too harsh on it. I just didn't think it was very good, but the idea that that movie is getting all these nominations and Godzilla Minus One got completely overlooked and got like a pity nomination, which, you know, I saw the team for Godzilla Minus One and they cheered when their movie came up for the visual effects nomination, which was good to see, and it's great, and they deserve it. They deserve any accolade that that film gets, because it's remarkable and amazing and was the best movie last year. But I wanted to come out here and say that, look, and I don't put too much stock into what the Academy says. I don't need the Academy to validate the things that I like. I don't need it. Don't even necessarily expect it. I just thought, it's weird. I knew they were going to snub it, and somehow they still disappointed me. It's one of those weird things like, wow, it was actually worse than I expected. They gave it one nomination, which is a crime, and especially when you consider that movies like Parasite got nominated for Best Picture, one Best Picture, and Parasite was a really good movie. I'm just saying, it's like, really? Really, Godzilla Minus One just got completely overlooked, and I'd love to hear a good explanation as to why, because they didn't even nominate it for Best International Film or Best Foreign Film or whatever that category is, which I thought that was a shoo-in. I was like, well, it's definitely going to get nominated in that category. It didn't, and I was just left aghast when I saw it. And again, I guess you can say Godzilla is officially an Academy Award nominated franchise now. It took 70 years, but we finally got there. But it is nice to see the Godzilla getting universal praise through this movie, and I thought maybe this is the time to give it a little bit of love come award season. And unfortunately, at the Academy Awards, they got horribly overlooked, which, when the Academy gets it right, like they did with Coda a couple years ago, I'll say they got it right. When they get it wrong, I'm going to call them out when they get it wrong. And this is one situation where they got it completely, utterly, 100% wrong. And it's, again, I didn't expect it to come in and sweep the Academy Awards and win everything, but I did expect a few more nominations than visual effects. And I think that's horribly, horribly disrespectful from the Academy. But what do you expect? What do you expect? But them's the breaks, unfortunately. And also, football season. The postseason is underway. We are heading into Championship Sunday, and we're getting ever so close to the Super Bowl. I'm not going to say of the 4 teams left, the 49ers, the Detroit Lions, the Baltimore Ravens, and the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm not going to say who I'm rooting for because I don't want to jinx it. Because I feel like every time I get behind a team and I say I want them to win, they lose. And I feel like I'm bad luck in that regard. And football fans are notoriously superstitious. So I'm not going to say who I'm rooting for. But what I will say is that based on everything I've seen, if I had to make an educated prediction, I would say the AFC matchup is a lot more of a toss-up. I would expect Baltimore to win because they look like the team to beat right now. That's my take. Although Kansas City, certainly I wouldn't be surprised if they won it. And the NFC, I feel like if Detroit won, that would be a bit of an upset. San Francisco looks like the team to beat in the NFC. So I'm anticipating Baltimore versus San Francisco in the Super Bowl, and based on everything I've seen, especially this past weekend, I would say Baltimore would take it all. That's just a prediction. It's not who I'm rooting for necessarily. I'm not saying who I'm rooting for, but based on everything I'm seeing, Baltimore looks like the team to beat. But we'll see if that actually happens. It would certainly, because I live around, I live in Maryland, and it would kind of drive this place wild if the Ravens won another Super Bowl, which would be pretty fun. It's nice to see them. It would be nice to see them win another Super Bowl that's not at the expense of the New York Giants. But hey, I was just happy that Dallas and Philly got eliminated week 1. I was like, okay, evil's been squashed, and I don't have to worry anymore. But Super Bowl's coming up, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, and Championship Sunday's a lot of fun, too. So hopefully we get 2 great games out of it, and hopefully we get a killer Super Bowl out of it as well. Now let's get into the wrestling talk, and by God, there is a lot going on in the world of wrestling. It's so much so that Hulk Hogan dropping hints that he's might possibly be in the Royal Rumble is like the smallest story to come out this week compared to everything else that came out today. Like Hulk Hogan potentially being in the Royal Rumble is kind of small potatoes, but this year marks the 40th anniversary. We just hit the 40th anniversary, I believe, today, of Hogan's first championship win against the Iron Sheik. And you know, I think I've got my numbers right there. I could be wrong. But big milestone year for Hulkamania and all the Hulkamaniacs. And then you got to think, it's WrestleMania 40 coming up. Does Hogan... Do you think maybe they have something planned for Hogan as like a 40th, you know, the last guy from the first WrestleMania to work a match at WrestleMania 40? They could potentially have something lined up for him. If they do, I pray to God it's a tag team match. Do not let Hogan go out there in a one-on-one because it wouldn't be great. I have fear of him, like, if he's in the Royal Rumble, he can't win, obviously. But how is he going to get eliminated? Because I would wince at the thought of Hogan taking an over-the-top rope bump at his age and in the shape he's in with his hip and everything. So, I don't know. If they've got something planned for Hogan, I'm not going to lie, I might pop a little bit. It'll get me in the nostalgia feels, especially, you know, WrestleMania 40 coming up, and to have Hogan on that card in some capacity would be kind of special, but I just be smart about it and be careful about it. I don't know if putting him in the Royal Rumble is the right way to go, given his hip and his back and everything else that's wrong with him. But we shall see. Saturday got a lot more interesting in that regard. I'll be looking out for Real American and some red and yellow getting into that ring. Can he make it down to the ring anymore? I don't know. We shall see. Yeah, here's... If they've got something lined up for Hogan come Rumble and Mania time, wish him all the best, and let's see how it goes. And in other news, it is heavily rumored that the Rainmaker, Kazuchika Okada, now that he has left New Japan Pro Wrestling and is looking for a place to go, that he will be going to WWE. And the belief is that he will start on NXT. Now, if that happens... God damn it, I gotta start watching NXT again. I have not watched NXT since, I think, COVID. I think since during the COVID. I think that was pretty much the end of NXT for me, and I take it back. I watched the TakeOver that was WrestleMania 38 weekend? 37 or 38, I don't remember which. But it was the one that had Mandy Rose in the four-way, and Mandy Rose was the best part of that show, because I was like, damn, she's looking good. Everything else was utterly forgettable. But... yeah, NXT has not been part of my regular wrestling rotation for quite a while, but if they get Okada on that show, that might get me to start watching the Tuesday Night brand again. So again, we'll see how it all goes. I mean, Okada, I was a big fan of his in New Japan and thought he was like one of the best world champions of all time. I thought he was great and everything, but he did very well in a New Japan Japanese setting. Can his style and his way of doing things translate for an American audience? I don't know. That's we'll wait and see. But I think Okada is special. I think he's a star, and I say, like, all right, if he goes to WWE, let's see how he does. I think he has a better chance of succeeding in WWE than he does in AEW, believe it or not, because AEW, and I've talked about this before, but AEW's problem with how they handle a lot of these guys is that they assume you know who he is before he gets there. And so when he shows up, they're like, we got this guy! And it's like, guy, you gotta like build a foundation for him. You gotta assume that people don't know who he is, especially American fans, because not everybody watches Japanese wrestling. And that's something that they've struggled with. Like they did it with Zack Sabre Jr. They're kind of doing it with Will Ospreay. They just kind of assume you know who he is, even though Ospreay's done a little bit more on AEW programming to kind of get a foothold in on there. It's just kind of like... Jay White's another one where it's like they just assume that everybody watched his run in New Japan. I'm like, not a lot of people did, buddy. You gotta integrate him to the American audience. You gotta introduce him properly, and I don't think AEW would do that. They would just assume that you know who he is, which isn't always the right way to go. So I think WWE would at least establish some kind of a foundation for him and let him grow and develop from there. And whether or not he succeeds, we'll just have to wait and see. So, yeah, if Okada goes to WWE, and specifically NXT, I will start watching NXT again, which never thought I'd say that, but here we are. Now, here is where things got really crazy. Part of the insane news that started breaking today, The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, is now on the board of directors for TKO, the parent company of both WWE and UFC. That's not something I expected to read, and here we are, like, I was reading on Twitter, and somebody made this point. It's like, did you ever think that in the year 2000, when you were watching The Rock and Triple H wrestle each other in pay-per-view main events, that they would actually be running WWE at some point? I'm like, no, I never envisioned that would be a possibility, but it's kind of like shaking up the whole wrestling world that Rock is now on the board of directors for TKO, and is going to be, presumably, have some kind of controlling influence over WWE programming, which means, where does that leave Cody Rhodes for WrestleMania? I don't know. It's like they're talking about doing Rock versus Roman, and it's like, I think somebody on the board of directors might have a little bit more pull than Cody Rhodes to make his story complete. I don't know. Well, again, it's one of those we'll just have to wait and see. They might end up doing a three-way between the three. I don't know. I don't know. But it's things are about to get a lot more fascinating with Rock's involvement, both behind the scenes and in front of the camera, especially as we head towards WrestleMania. This is shaping up to be one of the weirdest roads to WrestleManias of all time, mainly because of all the announcements surrounding it. It's like, oh, Punk's back, and oh, Rock's back, and oh, wait a minute, Hogan is showing up out of nowhere. Sure, why not? And the fate of Monday Night Raw and all this other stuff and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, man, this is wild. WWE's going cray-cray right now. So, it's going to be fun. The next couple months are going to be very, very interesting as we head into WrestleMania. But this has a chance to be like a really exciting WrestleMania. And I'm here for the ride, so let's bring it. Now, I already mentioned the fate of Monday Night Raw, which brings me up to another major news headline that dropped, and that is the home for Monday Night Raw is going to be Netflix. It's going to be on Netflix starting in January 2025, which is going to be really weird, although it is kind of nice that, I don't know, I might have to, it kind of chips into my justification for keeping Hulu. Now that Raw's just going to pop up on Netflix. That'll be interesting, to say the least. And Netflix is weird. It's that streaming service where I always get close to dropping it, and then they always release something that makes me go, oh, shoot, I've got to watch that. Okay, whether it be some of the Godzilla stuff, or some documentary I really like, or Fall of the House of Usher, which is another show I've been wanting to watch. They always manage to drop things at the right time to get me to, like, keep the service just when I think about dropping it. And now it's like, well, if Raw's going to be on Netflix, I might as well. Might as well hold on to Netflix. But I don't know. I know, is this part of the evolution of streaming becoming the new norm and cable TV ultimately fading into obscurity? I mean, Raw was a fixture of cable television for decades, and to have it on a streaming service now, that's definitely a sign of the direction of things as technology advances and grows. But again, it'll be interesting to see. Now it's like, all right, you don't have any network restrictions, so what are they gonna do with Netflix? Because Netflix has no rules and they do whatever they want. So are we gonna get a little bit more Attitude Era-y with Raw being on Netflix? Again, we'll just have to wait and see, and we have about a year to go before we actually see anything happen. But it's this feels like a big deal, and it's kind of, makes Raw a little bit more exciting. I'm hoping that with the move to Netflix that they drop Raw to 2 hours. That this is the perfect excuse. So, all right, drop it to a 2-hour show, because there's no reason for that show to be 3 hours. None at all. Absolutely none at all. Even at periods like this where the creative is mostly pretty solid, the shows are too long, the matches are too long, and by the end of the show, I've forgotten, half of it already. It's just too much. So I think if, this move to Netflix is going to be successful, I say make it a 2-hour weekly show again. There should be no reason to have a third hour, I don't think. But we'll see how that goes. But it's going to be really exciting to see what happens with Monday Night Raw with a new environment and new everything. It's going to be new and exciting. So again, we'll just have to wait and see how it goes. But I'm intrigued. I'm excited. And that news definitely lit my eyes up when I saw it this morning. So here's hoping everything goes well. And with all of the big news out of the way, let me talk about what I wanted to talk about in this video, and that is the Royal Rumble. We've got the Royal Rumble event happening this Saturday, the 2024 Royal Rumble with 2 Royal Rumble matches, which I'm not a fan of. I have stated that over and over and over again. If you want to do women's Royal Rumbles, it's like, my thought is either alternate with the men year to year, or make it a 2-night event with each Rumble happening on one of the 2 nights like you do WrestleMania, or something, anything. Just I don't like having 2 Rumbles on one night because it's exhausting and it's tough to sit through. But that's my opinion. No one's going to listen to it, so I will get off that soapbox. So I've got the card pulled up. The card, there isn't much of a card, but when you have 2 one-hour-long matches on the card, like, you know, you're not going to have a whole lot of matches. We've got, for the United States Championship, Logan Paul versus Kevin Owens. Logan Paul's going to retain the title because I'm almost certain that he's going to hold on to it till WrestleMania and drop it to LA Knight. That's my thinking. We've got Roman Reigns defending the Universal Championship against Randy Orton, AJ Styles, and LA Knight in a fatal 4-way. I've already made my feelings clear on Roman Reigns, but he is absolutely not in a million years dropping that title before WrestleMania. Even if he drops it at WrestleMania. So this is just a formality. Roman's going to retain the title, and that will be that. So then we've got the 2 Royal Rumble matches. We've got the Men's Rumble and the Women's Rumble. For the Women's Rumble, I'm going to predict Becky Lynch to win it. Possibly Jade Cargill is like a surprise potential, like, throw a monkey wrench into things type of pick. They've had her off TV ever since she debuted. They were teasing her for a bit, and now they've got her down to the Performance Center to improve, and maybe now's the time to re-debut, or kind of bring her out into the ring for the first time and have her throw out some bitches and win the Royal Rumble. That might be the way to present her, because she is I've said this about Jade ever since her AEW days. She looks like a star. Like, 10 out of 10 look, 8 or 9 out of 10 promo, in-ring, 2 or 3, maybe 4 on a good night. So that was the area she needed the most improvement. So if they can improve on that, they've got a bona fide star there. And if she's ready for the Rumble and she's in it, she would be a good pick to win it. But yeah, I'm going to pick Becky to win it and face Rhea Ripley, because that's obviously where they want to go. They kind of overplayed their hand on that one. But I'm picking Becky with Jade Cargill as a potential number 2. And then for the Men's Rumble, we've got, it's going to be either Cody or Punk. Nobody else really matters. It's either Cody or Punk. I'm going to pick Punk to win it, and go on to face Seth Rollins at WrestleMania. We'll see what kind of shape Seth Rollins is in come Mania time. A lot of things up in the air right now. You know, it's funny, all the news that's been breaking, the fate of Seth Rollins and the World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania barely registered with me, because everything else has been so nuts. But yeah, I'm going to say CM Punk wins the Rumble, and then Cody earns his title shot sometime in February at the Elimination Chamber, somehow, some way. So we'll see how all of that plays out. But yeah, I'm counting on Punk to win. But yeah, that's the Royal Rumble card right now. We'll see how it goes. It's going to be an interesting one for sure. All right, now this is what I wanted the main focus of the video to be, and what I've kind of been planning for the last couple of weeks, and that is a video talking about some of my favorite Royal Rumble matches from the past and explaining what makes a great Royal Rumble, because you know, there's, everybody has their favorites of anything, whether it be favorite WrestleMania, favorite pay-per-views, favorite Royal Rumbles, what have you. But when I look back on the classic Royal Rumbles and which ones were my favorites, there are certain recurring elements that stick out and kind of help elevate those Rumbles above other ones that have happened over the long history of the event. So when it comes to the Royal Rumble match, I mean, it's a very tricky match to do, because you're thinking there's at least 30 people in it. One year there were 40. Sometimes there's a little less than that with a couple of key, pre-match eliminations here and there. But for the most part, you've got 30 right off the bat. It's a very tricky match to do. I don't envy WWE having to put 2 of them together every year now, which seems exhausting, but whatever. When you have all of that star power together and you have all those bodies together, you also have great potential to create magic and special moments and all sorts of other things that help a big 30-man, cluster feel like a big deal and help it stick out in our minds and our memories forever and ever and ever for as long as we live as WWE fans. Some of my favorite Royal Rumbles, there's 4 I want to talk about. A 5th one that I'm going to leave off because it's been talked about so much, and that's the 1992 Rumble. Many consider it to be the greatest Rumble of all time. I agree that it's up there, as it's in my top 5 for sure. I think the finish is a little wonky, but other than that, I think it's an outstanding Royal Rumble, and, perfectly deserving of the praise that it gets. But it's been talked about so much that I don't feel like I can add a whole lot of new discussion to the 92 Rumble. It's a great one. Go check it out. And it has a lot of the things that I'm talking about when I talk about some of these other ones where I talk about my favorite Rumbles. So, first up, I'm going to mention the 1990 Royal Rumble, which may have been the first one I watched. I watched it on home video, the Coliseum video. This may have been the first Rumble I ever watched. I don't really remember, but this one, to me, was where they really started to get the Rumble format right, because the first Rumble was a 20-man match and was pretty good for what it was, but kind of, it was a very basic idea that was executed fundamentally well, even if they didn't really excel at anything. The 89 Rumble, the first 2/3 of it I thought were outstanding. One of the best Rumbles of all time, with the Demolition starting off at number 1 and 2, Battle of the Tag Team Partners, Andre the Giant's involvement, Jake Roberts bringing out the Snake, and the Mega Powers not quite exploding yet, but bubbling and boiling. The tension was definitely there, and all of that stuff was outstanding. And then you had DiBiase buying the number 30 number, which we knew, pretty much knew right off the bat. So a lot of exciting things going on, and then once Hogan and Savage were out of it, it kind of felt like the match lost a lot of steam, and it didn't help that Big John Studd, of all people, won the thing. So the 1991, I feel like they fixed some of those issues, kept the match consistently entertaining all the way throughout, and littered it with star power and big moments. One that really stands out to me is in the early going, there was a point in the match where there were 4 guys in there. It was Jake Roberts and Roddy Piper against Ted DiBiase and Randy Savage. They had kind of a makeshift tag team match with the heels and the faces going against each other. And what a collection of talent that is, because Jake and DiBiase were feuding already, but then you throw Piper and Savage into the mix, and it's like, wow, how great is this? So a lot of star power and a lot of great interactions. You got to see Piper interact with Savage, which was a personal dream match of mine as a kid that unfortunately never really happened on a grand stage. It happened, quote unquote, in WCW, but not in the way that I would have wanted or I envisioned it. But so that was great. You had Andre the Giant involved once again. You had Demolition eliminating Andre the Giant, which felt like a really big deal. And you had Ted DiBiase, who I mentioned earlier, being the first real marathon man. There had been some guys that lasted quite a bit in the past 2 Rumbles, like Mr. Perfect, I think, was the longest lasting guy in the 89 Rumble, but DiBiase was the first one to go in at number 1 and then last for almost the entirety of the Rumble match, and he played that role to perfection because the fans wanted him eliminated because he's such a great heel. They wanted him gone, so when he finally got knocked out, the pop was insane, and stuff like that makes me happy, where you really, really make fans want something, and then you give it to them, and you get that amazing pop out of it. And this is a case where it worked really, really well. And the Marathon Man in the Royal Rumble is something that we expect every year now, and they can go one or two ways. They can either be a really good babyface that you want to see give like an underdog performance and fight through all the odds and ultimately win, or they can be a sneaky heel that like survives against all odds and avoids elimination and all sorts of things like that. So those are the 2 ideal situations for a Marathon Man, and I think Ted obviously fell into the heel category, and I thought did a really, really good job and kind of set the pace for what all Marathon Man performances would be like in the Royal Rumble. Now, obviously, in 92, Ric Flair came along and then redefined it and kind of elevated it with one of the best Rumble performances ever. But Ted was like the first one to really do a really good job with the Marathon Man performance. And another thing that this Rumble did, I kind of talked about it with Demolition eliminating Andre the Giant, but this Rumble did a lot to set up stuff for WrestleMania 6. You saw Bad News and Roddy Piper get into it and setting up their match. You saw Dusty Rhodes and Randy Savage getting into it, setting up their mixed tag match at WrestleMania. Jake and DiBiase were feuding at the time, and this was a continuation of that. Demolition eliminating Andre. They set up a lot of stuff for WrestleMania 6. The biggest moment of which was Hulk Hogan having a showdown with the Ultimate Warrior. One of my favorite Rumble moments of all time, possibly my favorite Rumble moment of all time, because it was one of those like time stood still type of moments when the two of them were alone together in the ring. It was insane, and the crowd felt it, the announcers felt it, and it was a perfectly executed moment that gave us a small taste of what we were going to see at WrestleMania 6, one of the most epic WrestleMania main events of all time. Now, if I had to knock this Rumble for anything, it's not so much that Hogan won. It's weird that the WWF World Heavyweight Champion won the Royal Rumble, but it's not so much that he won, it's that there was nothing at stake. And that was a problem with the early Rumbles and probably why they're not as well remembered as some of the ones that followed. There was nothing at stake. It was just a fun match that they did. It was a fun concept, and it took a few years for them to really get it right and to really add significance to it. Obviously, the 92 Rumble is when they put the WWF World Championship on the line in the Rumble, which elevated it. And then after that, they made the title shot the prize, where if you win the Royal Rumble, you get the title shot at WrestleMania, and turned that into an annual tradition and officially created the road to WrestleMania moving forward. But prior to 92, there was nothing like that. So Hogan winning, it was like, okay, he won another match. And it's like, what did he get out of it? Nothing, you know. And that's really the only problem with this Rumble, because other than that, start to finish, it is very, very good, very exciting, and loaded with star power. And I didn't even mention half the people that were in it. You know, Rick Rude, Mr. Perfect came in at number 30. A lot of great names, big moments, a lot of star power. Very entertaining Rumble from start to finish. And the next Royal Rumble match that I want to talk about is the 1994 Royal Rumble, which was won by both Bret Hart and Lex Luger. An excellent finish where they pulled off that double elimination about as well as you possibly could. The only thing that I've ever seen top it was the accidental one that Cena and Batista did at 05, which I still say to this day they should have run with that, because it was just, if I were Vince, you know, watching that on the monitor, I would have seen dollar signs there, because it's like, oh, well, we've got our next pay-per-view main event, Cena versus Batista for the title shot, because it's like, that was just too perfect. I would have run with that, and, you know, instead he stormed down to the ring and blew out both his quads. But, anyway, talking about the 94 Rumble, this one also has quite a bit of star power. When, you know, you look at Bret, mostly the new generation guys, obviously, like Shawn Michaels and Kevin Nash and Bret Hart, Lex Luger, Owen Hart was in it. So it was mostly like, it had the star power, but it was mostly like the newer breed and not quite the established stars that we had seen in the previous Rumbles. And that makes it exciting on its own, because it feels fresher when compared to the Rumbles that came before it. But what really makes this Rumble stand out to me are a couple of things. One, there's the birth of the Diesel spot. And Diesel entered this Rumble and threw people out one at a time and was the big monster that was just eliminating guys left and right, one at a time. And it's ever since then that's been known as the Diesel spot. And a few other guys have done it over the years and eliminated multiple people, being the giant monster. I think Lesnar did it, that one Rumble where he literally eliminated half the Royal Rumble, which was awesome, I thought. But the birth of that monster spot was here with Diesel, and it was outstanding. It was great. And of course he got eliminated thanks to Shawn Michaels, his buddy, which set the stage for their eventual falling out later in the year, sowing those seeds and laying those little breadcrumbs for things to come later. All great stuff. Shawn gave probably his first really good Royal Rumble performance, as he was kind of the last heel that was left with Bret and Luger. Luger was one of the big anticipated ones that was expected to win, one of the heavy favorites because of everything that happened the year before at SummerSlam 93. But the other heavy favorite was Bret the Hitman Hart, who had just gotten so over, especially after he got screwed out of the title at Mania 9 and had that feud with Jerry Lawler, and then the growing issues with his brother Owen, which came to a head here on this show. where him and Owen went for the tag titles, and they were unsuccessful when Brett got injured, and then Owen attacked his brother out of frustration, officially severing those family ties and setting us up for Owen versus Brett at WrestleMania. So, as a kid, this is around the age where I started to like think about like mapping things out. It's like, all right, where are things going to go, and making predictions. And when Owen did what he did and he injured Brett, it was like, okay, it's going to be Brett and Owen at WrestleMania. That was in my mind. And then during the Rumble, the buzzer sounds, and nobody comes out. And immediately the announcers picked up on it. Vince and Ted DiBiase were the announcers, and they picked up on it. It's like, that must have been the crestfallen Vince McMahon. That must have been Bret Hart. And you just think, okay, so that's going to be Bret and Owen at Mania. Owen cost him his chance to get his title back. And that's going to be the whole crux of the story. And I know I said Hogan Warrior might be my number one Rumble moment. This one is also very highly up there as one of my favorite Rumble moments, because they totally tricked me. I bought it hook, line, and sinker when nobody came out at that number. I thought it was Brett. I bought into it. I totally bought into it, hook, line, and sinker. And then I think it was 2 numbers later, buzzer sounds, and Bret Hart limps out there, and the pop of that crowd was insane, and Vince was going crazy on commentary. I cheered like a bitch when I was a kid. They got me. They totally got me, and it was one of my favorite Bret Hart moments of all time, and really sold him as like the determined, unstoppable underdog guy. It's like, he's not Hulk Hogan, and he's not going to mow down people. He's not the Ultimate Warrior or the Undertaker or anything like that, but he is like, he's got heart and soul, and moments that like this really sold that. And then it comes down to Brett and Luger, who are the top 2 picks to win it. It's like, well, geez, who's going to win? Because again, it kind of mirroring the 90 Rumble, where it's like, all right, it's got to be Hogan or Warrior, right? And some people probably said it should have been Warrior that would have won. I don't know. I think it means more that they saved Hogan's defeat for WrestleMania, but you know, whatever. But here, it's like, okay, so these are the top 2 picks. Who's going to win it? I legitimately don't know. And then they do that double finish where they look at it from every conceivable angle, and it's just like, no, that's a double finish. And they are named the co-winners of the Royal Rumble. One of the most memorable finishes in Royal Rumble history. And it perfectly set the stage for what was going to happen at WrestleMania 10, where Brett ultimately overcame everything and won back his championship. And poor Lex Luger got left in the dust, but hey, that's the wrestling business. What are you going to do? But yeah, Royal Rumble 94, very memorable. It has some big moments, a very memorable finish, and stands today as one of my personal favorites. My next favorite Rumble that I'm going to talk about, let's jump ahead a few years into the tail end of the Attitude Era, and that is 2001. I've said before, I may have said this before, I don't know, but like, if you look at 2001, the first few pay-per-views of that year from WWE, Royal Rumble, No Way Out, and WrestleMania 17, that might be the best 3 pay-per-view stretch in company history. And it was like, you know, the Attitude Era was like, they were just at the peak, man. And of course, WCW was officially killed off during that time, and they had won the war. But this was a very exciting time to be a WWE fan. You know, Austin was back from the neck surgery, so you had Austin and Rock kind of sharing as like the 1A, 1B. And both of them were entered into the Royal Rumble. Kurt Angle was the champion and would lose the belt to The Rock in February. But, you know, top to bottom, again, that star power. You have The Undertaker, you have Kane, you have Triple H getting involved. He wasn't an official entrant in the Rumble, but he almost cost Austin the Rumble, which set the stage for their big match in February and keep their storyline going. But Austin ultimately won the Royal Rumble, but I want to talk about a few other things that happened, namely the involvement of Drew Carey, which got some laughs. I thought was chuckle-worthy. And the performance of Kane, which I will say right now is probably my favorite Royal Rumble performance of all time, because you have the monster performance where he just dominates and throws people out left and right. And Kane did that here, where he set the record for most Royal Rumble eliminations at this time. It's been surpassed since, but Kane set the record on this night with 11 eliminations, I want to say it was. And he also had the Marathon Man performance where he came in at number 5, I believe, and lasted all the way to the end with Austin before being the last one eliminated. And through it all, you know, he survived everything and he dominated his way through this whole thing. So it's like you got a little bit of the monster and the Marathon Man all at once. And it was this awesome performance. And by the end of it, I was like, I know he's not going to win. I kind of want Kane to win now. He's not going to win. It's going to be Austin or Rock, but I kind of want Kane to win this thing now. He reunited with The Undertaker, and they officially reformed the Brothers of Destruction at this Rumble match. There was also a bit of a hardcore battle royal that broke out at one point with weapons being used and everything else. You got the Battle of the Hardys when they eliminated each other, kind of like building off of what Axe and Smash did in '89. A lot of stuff going on here, and it made for a very exciting Royal Rumble from start to finish. Easily the best one of the Attitude Era. And again, it was like, okay, you kind of knew it's like, all right, it's going to be Rock or Austin. And you watched to see which one of them was going to win. Whereas most of the time, 2000 kind of knew Rock was going to win. 99, I guess I figured Austin was going to win. They gave it to Vince. It was kind of a neat little swerve. I'm perfectly okay with Vince winning in 99. I've said that before. I thought that worked. But yeah, it was, the finish was a little unpredictable because you knew, like, it's going to be Rock or Austin, and then the other one's probably going to win the belt in February, setting up Rock and Austin at WrestleMania, which is ultimately what happened. But yeah, this was an awesome Rumble. Like I said, best one of the Attitude Era, for sure. And it had the star power, it had big moments, it had a lot of excitement and action, and a satisfying finish with Austin winning, even though I'd kind of put my flag in Kane's camp by that point. I'm like, I'm kind of pulling for Kane to win. But that didn't happen, but it's okay. Fantastic Rumble, like I said, and I keep drilling this point home, best one of the Attitude Era. And finally, let's wrap this up by talking about the Royal Rumble from 2004, 3 years after the previous one. And unfortunately, even though it's one of my favorite Rumbles, it is the Royal Rumble that we are not supposed to remember because a certain somebody won it and then went on to perform certain deeds in 2007 that put a black eye on his entire legacy. So one of my favorite Rumbles is one of the ones that we're not supposed to remember. But the 2004 Rumble, again, it has all the things I love about Royal Rumble. It's got the star power, with Mick Foley getting entered in, Goldberg getting entered into his first Royal Rumble. You had he who shall not be named, Chris Benoit. You had John Cena. You had John Cena, who was just starting to become something at that point in time. You had Big Show, who was the big giant threat in the whole thing. And, excuse me, you had Randy Orton, who was becoming a budding star. Went in at #1 and put on a heck of a performance as well. So, loaded with star power all the way through. And the other thing, again, I talked about it with the 90 Rumble, and this one did it very effectively as well, and that was setting up stuff for WrestleMania, where Kane came down and dominated, and then the lights went out, and you hear the gong, and you go, oh my god, Undertaker's coming back as the dead man, and that freaked out Kane and set the stage for their match at WrestleMania. Goldberg entered the Rumble, I believe, at number 30, and then got eliminated by Brock Lesnar, who interfered in the match, setting up Goldberg versus Lesnar at WrestleMania, where Goldberg would then go on to cost Brock the WWE Championship in February in his match with Eddie Guerrero, setting that up. And you had Benoit winning the title, ultimately deciding to go to Raw and setting him up to face Triple H and Shawn Michaels. You had John Cena being eliminated by the Big Show, who would be his opponent at WrestleMania 20. They did a lot of things to set up WrestleMania, but the best example of it came in the Randy Orton-Mick Foley feud, where Foley and Orton were supposed to have a match on Raw, but Foley walked out on the match for unknown reasons. And he was called a coward, and Orton spat in his face and everything, and Foley disappeared. And Orton invited Foley, to sit in the front row for this event to watch me win the Royal Rumble. And I will, kill all the legends and win the Rumble and have my crowning moment right in front of you. And Foley didn't show up, and the seat was empty. And Jim Ross had to admit on commentary right at the start of the match, what, he's a coward. What do you want me to say, King? He's a coward. I can't believe I'd ever say that about Mick Foley, but he's a coward. And then somewhere along the way, I believe it was Scotty 2 Hotty, got beaten up backstage. And Mick Foley came out of nowhere and took his spot and then charged for Randy Orton, who went in at #1 and was in there the entire time. And it's one of those great moments where you have a really hot feud between two talents that you want to see. Specifically, you want to see a babyface beat the ever-living crap out of a heel. And when you have that dynamic, the Royal Rumble is a perfect setting for that. And going back to the 92 Rumble, that moment where Jake is in the ring, and throughout the match, whenever the buzzer went off, Jake would check and look at the entryway and then turn back to doing what he was doing, because he knew who was coming, and that was Randy Macho Man Savage. Jake had the Cobra bite him, he ruined his wedding and did all this other stuff, so Savage wanted to kill him. Slapped his wife, he also did that. And a lot of things that Jake had to answer for. So when Savage finally did come out, Pop was insane, and Jake immediately, did this sneaky heel thing and snuck out of the ring like the snake that he is, and that stuff was great. Similar thing here, where you think Foley's gone, he's not coming out, he chickened out or whatever, and then he becomes, surprise, he's the surprise entrant in the Royal Rumble, storms down there, beats the ever-living crap out of Orton, gives us a small taste of what we're going to get at WrestleMania, and Backlash the month after. So, a lot of great setup for WrestleMania there, satisfying finish with Benoit winning, which kind of has been soured now for reasons I don't have to explain. But the 2004 Rumble effectively set the stage for WrestleMania while providing a bunch of special moments along the way and showcasing its stars. So, in summary, now that I've talked about these 4 Royal Rumble matches and a couple of key attributes of a few other ones, what is it that makes a Royal Rumble match great? I think it's a handful of things. One, it's star power, because I remember PS Power back in the day doing a video talking about the 40-man Rumble, where it was like, who cares if there are 40 men in it if it's just a bunch of ham and eggers? And, the roster at that time was not very great. And you look at that particular Rumble, and it wasn't very filled with star power, and you didn't really care. If anything, the 10 extra guys only made it feel more bloated and made it take longer than you wanted it to. So that was a problem. So a great Royal Rumble needs star power. It needs big moments that make it memorable and set it apart from all the other Rumbles. I think the 90 Rumble did that with the Hogan Warrior thing. I think 94 did that with Bret Hart's whole storyline and the double finish. 2001 did that with Kane's performance and the stuff involving Austin and Triple H and The Rock, and it coming down to, okay, who's going to win, Rock or Austin? And the 2004 Rumble made it memorable with the teaser for The Undertaker, teasing Brock Lesnar versus Goldberg, and the stuff between Mick Foley and Randy Orton. So all of that stuff was great as well. So you need, like I said, you need star power, you need big moments, and you need to do something to set up some stuff for WrestleMania and keep some storylines going for WrestleMania. Either start stories or continue stories that are ongoing, and using the Royal Rumble as a platform to do just that. And a lot of the best Rumbles are the ones that really keep that in mind, where it's like, okay, we've got to set some stuff up for WrestleMania. And some of the worst Rumbles are the ones where it's just guys pile into the ring, and then eventually we get a winner, and that nothing really that special happens. And it's a lot of the modern Rumbles have been like that, where I'm waiting for some kind of like a big moment or big story to unfold, and nothing really happens until you get to the finish. I think one that sticks out to me was the one that Sheamus won. What was that, 2012? Where all signs pointed to Jericho winning the Rumble. Like, they made it look like Jericho was going to win. And then you go to the Rumble match, and Sheamus wins out of nowhere, and it's just like, okay, this felt pointless. And, right, so a lot of the worst Rumbles, they don't even have to be that bad. They just have to kind of miss the mark on delivering on a satisfying winner, showcasing their stars and making big moments involving those stars. So, it's a very simple formula. I don't think I'm revealing anything too, grandiose by saying that this is what makes a great Royal Rumble. But a lot of times, they kind of forget it and kind of focus on the wrong things, whether it be pushing a winner that nobody wants. Like, we went on that stretch for a few years where everybody hated the winner. Like when Batista and then Roman and then Triple H. It was like, man, that was a bad stretch there for a while. Or sometimes they'll just not take advantage of the platform that they have, where it's like, all right, we've got 30 guys. Let's do some stuff with them. And you can have somebody get over and get some stories over without having them involved in the finish or having them win. There's plenty of things you can do. The 2003 Rumble, I think the best part of that Rumble, because the finish was obvious. We all knew Lesnar was going to win. But what helped that Rumble stand out at least a little bit was the stuff involving Shawn Michaels and Chris Jericho, where Jericho got Shawn eliminated first and then lasted as the Marathon Man all the way through until Shawn came back and was like, no, screw you, pal, and eliminated Jericho and cost him his whole Marathon Man grand performance. So that stuff was really good. So the Royal Rumble, with so many names involved, creates a lot of potential potential for great situations. And the best Rumbles are the ones that take advantage of that and maximize the potential of that situation. So that's my 2 cents, and that's enough ranting and raving in this particular video. I think I've gone on long enough. So thank you everybody for watching. I appreciate all the support. Again, if you want to submit questions for the question and answers video, the email is in the description. So be sure to use that. And also, you can DM your questions to me on Twitter. That is also in the description, so check that out. But that is all I have for you now. Hopefully, all of you enjoy the Royal Rumble. It's going to be a crazy weekend, and I'll have more to say about it next week when we get all of the fallout. So I'm done for today. Take care, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your week.